There's three main flavors of espresso, and that's nutty, fruity, or burnt. Anyone who tells you otherwise and shows you the big wheel of flavors and goes like, OMG, the foretaste reminds me of candied apples is bullshitting you. Yes, these flavors do kind of exist, but you're sure as hell not gonna notice them while the barista is blasting flip turn on the speakers and your date is trauma dumping about their parents. Okay, but what if I want to do the big fancy taste testing and sound like the smartest guy in the room? Well, first off, we have to talk about how to taste. From what everyone has told me, there's two main ways of sipping coffee. One is just sipping normally, letting it sit in your mouth for a moment, and then swallowing. Pretty easy peasy, This way you get the foretaste, but you also let the coffee hit the side of your cheeks and the middle of your tongue, and then you get the aftertaste as it hits the back. Or you could do it the douchebaggy way and sip it like it's red wine. Basically, you slurp the coffee and then inhale while it's still sitting there in your mouth. That way you introduce a whole lot of oxygen and aerate it. Does this improve the flavor? Again, I don't know. I honestly can't tell. Maybe there's a science article on it or something, but unless it's a peer-reviewed study, most likely it was just written by a dude who had way too much free time. And then you're going to get this whole argument about epistemology and scientific anti-realism and whether or not perception is as objective as we think it is, and then Descartes goes like, no, it was all invented by some demon. I don't fucking know anymore. The more I learn about the world, the more I just accept things at face value, because holy fuck, I am tired of thinking. Anyways, what are the flavors you should be looking for? Well, I already told you, nutty or fruity. And most of the time, the flavor is just going to depend on the region. So all along the globe, there's this thing called the coffee belt, which is basically just the equator. So all of your coffee is going to come from Latin America, Africa, or Indonesia. There's some other countries like Vietnam, India, and China, but for the most part, your beans are going to come from Ethiopia, Brazil, or Indonesia. Indonesian and Latin American beans usually have those more chocolatey and nutty flavors, but Indonesian beans will have some subtle notes of spices like cinnamon. African beans, on the other hand, are usually fruitier and a bit sour, but sometimes they're just beans that defy their expectations. So instead of judging the bean's taste by the region that came from, just judge it by whether or not it tastes nutty or fruity. Or you could just default to saying these smart sounding words like tannins, which is just another word for bitter and dry, or finish, which is just aftertaste, or aroma, which is just smell, or notes, which is just underlying flavors. Or better yet, pull out the flavor chart, just play darts with it, and whatever flavors you land on, they're probably there. Okay, so you now know how to taste coffee, or at least you know what it should taste like depending on where it came from, but what about the anatomy of the actual espresso? Like, what the heck is a crema and body, and why did they give me this weird-ass cup that looks like a mason jar? Does it serve any purpose? From what I've heard, the type of cup helps a bit with aromatics. Like if you have water in a cup versus a bowl, which is going to evaporate faster? And then your science teacher is going to be like, actually the bowl, because it has more surface area. So if you have a wider cup, then you're going to get more of the aromatics, you're going to be able to smell the coffee a bit more. But honestly, I can't tell the difference. As for the anatomy of an espresso shot, it's made up of three separate parts: heart, body, and crema, but usually a lot of places fuck up on the heart and body and they end up becoming this one homogeneous fluid. A lot of times it's not even the barista's fault, it's just that the beans they were given were stale or the machine they're using is just cheap. If you really want to know whether or not your barista is any good, just look at their latte art. Not at the quality of the latte art per se, but just look at how the milk dissolves. Does the milk form bubbles as soon as it's served to you, or after a few minutes, or after a solid 20 minutes? Is the layer of milk on top distinct and suspended well above the canvas? If your barista can't even handle steaming milk, then chances are they fucked up on the espresso shot too, because a lot of the milk art depends on how well the espresso was pulled. Anyways, back to our anatomy talk. There's the heart, the body, and the crema. The heart is the bottom of the shot. This is where you get your heaviest concentration of extract and flavor, which also explains its darker color. The body is the layer above the heart that mixes a bit with the crema, which is why you get this distinctly lighter color. And the crema is the foam on top. The crema is where you get all your bitterness. Apparently that's because of carbon dioxide. I always thought it was because of tannins, but whatever. By the way, this is why they serve you a little spoon with your coffee so you can push the crema aside and sip under it so you just get the body. You can also do this with lattes and cappuccinos. Just push the foam aside and sip under. That way you're only getting the coffee and not the foam. You could also use the spoon to mix your coffee with the foam or espresso with the crema. To some people, it just makes the coffee taste better. That's cool too. Speaking of cool, let's talk temperature. Basically, it's just like food. If you serve it hot, it's going to taste better. But why? Why is that the case? Honestly, I don't know. I don't know anything about coffee anymore. Coffee is like the epitome of subjectivity. It's like this reminder of how none of us see the same things, and that objective truth might not even reside outside of us. Like, all of this is made up within us. Intellect and perception are not separate entities, and everything is relational. And all of science's hypotheses are explanations of the how, but never the what. So we will never have the explanatory power to describe God. You know what? Yeah, the next time someone asks you about your opinion about coffee and you want to sound smart and stuff, just recite what I said. Who knows, maybe they'll be impressed. Worst case scenario, you just give them a bad case of existential dread. Who the hell isn't suffering from that right now?